Hello and welcome to CodeBlaze. In the last episode of creating color switch in Godot, we implemented the start screen and added the logic to start the game. So today we'll be implementing the end screen, basically whenever the game gets over, and also creating a simple HUD to display the current points. And with that, we'll be completing the all the implementation part that's required for the color switch game. And in the next episode, we'll look at how to export it as an APK and run it on a Android device. So let's get started. So creating the end screen is also going to be very similar to the start screen. We'll again be using the VBox. So let's just create a new scene for that. Call it end screen. Okay, it will be a user interface. We'll rename it here only. Okay, to this node we'll add a VBox container. Let's go to the anchor, reset all the way. For the margins, we'll reset this and give it a padding. So again, 64, 64, minus 64, minus 64. And next we'll set the separation also. So go with 300 for here, since we are going to have three elements here, right? One is the label for score, then the actual numeric score, and one helper label saying touch to restart. So let's go here, add the three labels, and we'll rename these also. So score label. Another label we want. This would be the actual score. And finally a label for restart. So we can just put from few placeholder values. So this would be score. Again, alignment is center. And for our VBox also, we'll put it at center. Then for our score, we'll just put 999 aligned center. And restart would be start to restart aligned on center. So now let's just set the font size for them. Fonts, new dynamic font, edit it, font resource, load settings. So our top level label we can have 64 as the font size. Use maps and filters. For our actual score, we'll have a little bit bigger font size. Let's go to new dynamic font. Edit this. Again, quick load that. Settings, this can be 128. And finally for a restart, we'll have the same font size as we have it on our start screen. And I think there's a better way to manage these fonts using themes in Godot, as they're more of a hierarchical sort of thing, so that your styles get propagated to your UI elements. And it would be definitely better to set up those things for a bigger project. But since it's a pretty simple thing that we are working for right now, so we can just manually change these values wherever we want, as we are not going to have much labels anyway. Let's just set it to 48. Just maps and use filter. Okay, so these are the end screen we have ready. Next we'll be adding some logic here so that the correct score is displayed, as well as on the restart the game should restart. So to our end screen we'll add a new script. Just put it in the correct place and open this, create. So here also we'll define a custom signal for restart. So signal restart. Okay, now my VS Code auto completion is kind of messed up. And I think you would have noticed this before because I have two instances of the Godot running. So it doesn't know from where it needs to pick the auto completion data. That's why sometimes I don't get auto completion results. Okay. Next, we'll create a onReady var. So this would be the reference to our score label, score, and this will be equal to dollar vbox container score. Okay, so that's the actual path here. Okay, finally we'll have a member variable also that will signify if the game is over. And by default it would be false. So let's write our process function, func process. Again, we don't need the delta here. Okay. Now here we'll put an if is game over and input dot is action just pressed UI select. If this is the case, we can emit the signal, restart, and hide. Okay. Finally, we'll have another function here to enable this end screen, right? Because by default end screen would be disabled. So we'll call it func show end screen. And this will take in a score. Okay. So we'll set score dot text equal to string value of the score. And we'll set is game over also to true and call the show function. So basically, whenever the game over signal is emitted by the player, we'll capture that in our main script and send the score here. Okay. So let's set up the game over signal also for our player. Okay, let's go to our player GD and here we'll set up our signal game over. And this time we want to pass the actual score also as a parameter. So that's why we'll define one parameter for the signal, right? Next in our game over logic, it's this only where over. So basically we'll define a new game over function only, that would be better, right? And we'll call this function instead of printing game over wherever we want. Okay, so we'll do an emit signal game over and we'll pass in the score. Okay, and we can execute this function wherever we are printing game over, game over, game over. Okay, and next in our main GD, we'll have to connect that signal. But before that, let's add the end screen to our main screen. Here we'll take in our end screen. Okay, that we have added here, and let's open our main script. Okay, we'll get a reference to the end screen here onReady var. This will be equal to dollar UI slash end screen. Okay, and by default we want to hide this, so let's create a ready function and we'll say end screen dot right? Okay, and we'll connect our player signal also, and on game restart also we'll connect. Okay, so let's go to our screen again. So here we need to connect the restart signal. So on game restart, connect this, and next we'll connect the game over signal also. So game over. Okay, so now we have both our signals here. This will be an int. Okay, fine. So on game over, what all we need to do? We need to make sure the player is no longer active, and we need to show the end screen, right? So the same way we are setting player active as true here, we'll set it as false, since we don't want our camera or anything or any other inputs to be captured. So we'll call this here. And next we can show our end screen using the score. We'll do end screen. So end screen, we'll pass in the score. Is this giving mixed tabs? Yeah. So with this, we have our end screen done, our start screen done. And okay, let's restart the game also. And to restart the game, we just need to reload the level. To do that, we can do get tree and reload current scene. Okay, so let's see all of this in action. Start the game and we get our message. Okay, let's get some score. Now we have score of 1 and I collided with the red color. So I have my end screen visible with the score. So I can just press touch to restart and I'm again back on the initial state for the screen. Okay, so yeah, like the gameplay loop is done. All we need is some in-game HUD here to display the current score rather than seeing the score at the end. So let's tackle that. Now creating our in-game UI is also going to be really simple thanks to the great UI system by Godot. So to get started, let's create a new scene for it. We'll call it in-game. Okay, again, this needs to be a user interface node and this can be a in-game. Right. Now, this control doesn't need to expand the whole screen. So we can reduce the anchors to 0 so that it sticks to the top top left corner. Okay. Next, we'll add some background. Like you can have directly our text also our score, but it's nice to have some background, right? So to do that, we'll use a 9 patch rect. 9 patch rect. So this basically splits container images so that it scales nicely, right? You can directly put a texture here, but then your texture needs to be perfectly designed for the kind of scale you want, right? What I mean by this is like I have this background HP bar container. So if I drop here, so this is nothing but a kind of a circular rectangle with circular boundaries. And if I don't use a 9 patch rect, I have to use it in its exact aspect ratio. But by using a 9 patch rect, I can freely edit the size I want and Godot will maintain the aspect ratio. Like right now, it's pretty squished, but you still see we are getting the curves correctly. Now, if we go in a rectangle and if I increase the X size to 200, still it is maintained pretty nicely and we'll set the Y to 80. Okay, and similarly, we'll set the minimum size also so that our container doesn't shrink, right? And rather than it sticking right at the top left, we'll put in sub paddings, so like 32 and 32. So from the screen boundaries, it will be a bit inset. Okay, next we'll add another texture rect. So this is basically an icon, right? To this, we'll add the star icon. And again, we'll say keep centered. And for the rect, since we know our height for the background rect is 80, we'll set that. So this way our star is nicely present towards the left of our container. Finally, we'll need to add a label. That would be our actual score, right? And let's go into the anchors and increase it to everything. And we'll go in our margin and reset this so that our label takes up the whole space. Let's type in some default values like 999. We'll change the font. Let's position it first, right? So alignment, we want it from the right, and vertical alignment is the center. Okay, and towards the right also, we don't want it to go all the way to the end. So we'll put a -10 right margin. Fine. Next, we'll do our theme overrides. We'll create another dynamic font, edit this, we'll quick load our font settings. We'll use bitmaps and filters, and font size can be 48 or 64. Yeah, 64 is fine. And next, let's see, we'll put this bottom at -2 so that it moves a bit down, and we'll set the vertical align to bottom so that it's roughly in position to the star. Now you can change the bottom spacing more, like set it to -4. I think -2 looks great to me because we are going to see it from a very far away distance. So that's fine. So with this, we have our in-game UI ready. All we need to do is update the text for this particular score value. And for that, we'll be emitting a signal from a player whenever the score changes. And we'll be capturing that inside of this in-game UI. So we'll be adding a script to this root node. So let's start by going to our player script and create a new signal that will represent our score, or it will represent when the score is changed. So signal increase score and pass in a score here. So whenever our score is changed, we just need to emit the signal. Is that happening? That is ink score here. So instead of printing, we can emit the signal, increase score, and pass in the current score also. So this way the signal is emitted. All we need to do is listen to the signal. So for that, we'll go here and add a script to our in-game source in-game. Let's open it. And first we'll get to the reference to the score label. So on ready var, this is equal to 9 pad rect slash score, and on ready we'll set the score to be 0. So we always want to start with the 0 score. So to do that, we'll create the ready func. Okay. And finally, we just need to connect the signal from our player. So to do that, let's go to our main scene, add in our in-game scene to the UI. Okay, go to the player mode, select, and in the increase score, we'll say connected to the in-game UI node. Connect, get our score here. So this would be an int. Okay, So all we need to do is set the score text. So let's copy this, and this will be equal to string value of 4. Okay, I think that should be enough. One more thing, we need to hide and show the score depending upon our game state. So we'll get the onReady var here. Just call it HUD is equal to UI in game. Okay. And by default, we'll hide this. Okay. When the game starts, we'll show this. This company stuff tabs. And on game over, we'll again hide this. Let's copy this. So this way our HUD will only be visible while the full game is running. So let's save this and try it out. Play the game. Getting a beautiful start screen, and we can see our score also in the top left corner. It increases as we collect our stars. To see how I can take it. I mean, I think the separation between the traps is making it too easy, but okay, I quickly pressed the end. But if you see, our score had also hides itself on the end screen, and we have our score visible. So that's all for this episode. We created some nice UI for our game and completed the complete game state. So from the start screen to the in-game scenarios and the end screen, so the complete application loop is ready. We have the core gameplay functionality of color switch implemented, an infinite trap spawning system, and some beautiful camera work to track a player at its current position exactly. So that's all that's going to be there as far as implementation goes in this series. And I hope this has really helped you start your game dev journey with Godot and help you understand the basics of Godot or the functionality of Godot in a more practical scenario by putting them to test through developing a simple game. And yeah, if you have any reviews, please leave them down below in the comments. And if you want to see future such series, do support the channel, share it with your friends, and as the interest grows, I'll be creating more and more series. I'll have one more short episode after this, which will basically go over exporting such a game for an Android device, and we'll be running that on an emulator to see if our game actually works on a published scenario. So thanks for watching. Please do subscribe and leave some ratings, leave your feedback, and I'll see you again. Goodbye.